In the rugged heart of the Scottish Highlands, where mist clings to the glens and the mountains stand like ancient guardians, a legend was born. His name was Robert Roy MacGregor, known to the world as Rob Roy. He was more than a man. He was a myth in motion. A cattleman, a rebel, a Highlander who defied both poverty and power. In a land of clans and codes, he became a symbol of honor and resistance. Born in 1671 into Clan MacGregor, Rob Roy entered a world where loyalty was sacred and the sword often settled disputes. The MacGregors were a proud but persecuted clan, outlawed by the British Crown and driven into the hills. Young Rob grew up with fire in his veins. He learned to ride, fight, and lead. His bloodline carried rebellion, and his heart carried defiance. As he grew, Rob Roy became a cattle drover, a respected trade in Highland society. But in the tense political atmosphere of the early 1700s, the line between business and banditry was thin. When a deal went bad and he was accused of embezzlement, the Crown branded him a criminal. His lands were seized. His name, already infamous, became legendary. Rob Roy didn't beg forgiveness. He became an outlaw, not hiding from the law, but challenging it. He led raids, retrieved stolen property, and upheld his own code of justice. To the poor, he was a protector. To the rich, a menace. Like Robin Hood with a claymore, he made the Highlands a battlefield of ideals. He avoided capture time and again, disappearing into the folds of the Highlands. His knowledge of the land was unmatched, his loyalty to his people unbreakable. The British viewed him as a criminal, the Scots as a folk hero. Ballads were sung of his cunning, poems written of his honor. His name echoed through taverns and castles alike. But Rob Roy was more than folklore. He lived through a time when Jacobite uprisings threatened to tear Scotland apart. Though never a key general, he sympathized with the Jacobite cause, the return of the Stuarts to the throne. His life was tied to rebellion, not by politics, but by pride. He fought for a Highland way of life that was vanishing before his eyes. Eventually, the Crown caught up to him. He was imprisoned, pardoned, imprisoned again. But by the 1720s, Rob Roy was no longer a threat. He was a symbol. Even King George I acknowledged him. He had transformed from outlaw to legend, a transition few men ever achieve in their own lifetimes. In 1734, at the age of 63, Rob Roy died at home. No grand battle claimed him. No royal decree silenced him. He died quietly, but the story he left roared like thunder through the ages. His grave, tucked away in Balquidder churchyard, is still visited by those who believe in freedom, defiance, and the undying soul of Scotland. Rob Roy's tale lives on not just in books and film, but in the very spirit of rebellion. He remains a symbol of the Highlander who refused to kneel, who carved justice from chaos. He didn't rule a nation, but he ruled hearts. His legend was earned, not inherited. In every story of resistance, in every struggle against oppression, there is a Rob Roy, a man who chooses the hard path, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And in the misty hills of Scotland, if you listen closely, you can still hear the hoofbeats of the last Highlander who never backed down. Long after his death, Rob Roy's legend only grew. In the 18th and 19th centuries, as Romanticism swept through Europe, writers and poets rediscovered him. Sir Walter Scott's 1817 novel, Rob Roy, turned him into a literary icon. Brave, cunning, noble. The truth was complex, but the myth was irresistible. He became Scotland's outlaw king in the hearts of readers across continents. This romanticized image resonated deeply in the young United States. Americans still shaping their own identity saw in Rob Roy a kindred spirit, someone who fought empire, stood for freedom, and protected the common man. Across oceans and generations, his Highland defiance became universal. Yet for Scotland, Rob Roy was not just legend, he was legacy. In a time when Highland culture was under attack, when tartans were banned and clans dismantled, his story preserved the spirit of resistance. Even stripped of land, language, and law, the Highlanders' pride lived on in Rob Roy's name. His legacy was not of conquest, but of resilience. Rob Roy never sought a throne. He sought fairness. He fought not for glory, but for dignity. He represented the everyday Scot who refused to be broken by politics or poverty. That's why his story endures, not as royal history, but as human struggle. Rob Roy's life also speaks to the blurry line between hero and outlaw. To the British authorities, he was a criminal, but to his people, he was justice itself. He lived in a time when survival required moral compromise, and yet he seemed to carry honor like a sword, visible, sharp, and unyielding. Today, travelers trek to Balquhidder to stand before his grave. Tour guides still speak his name with reverence. Children hear his story by campfires, just as they did centuries ago. He is more than history, he is heritage, a thread woven through Scottish identity like the red in the tartan. In film and media, Rob Roy remains a symbol of rugged nobility. The 1995 film starring Liam Neeson brought his story to a global audience, reinforcing his image as a protector of family and honor. While dramatized, it rekindled interest in the man behind the myth and brought new generations into the fold. Even in Scotland's modern independence movements, echoes of Rob Roy remain. His defiance of centralized authority, his protection of local customs, and his distrust of distant rulers resonate in political debates and national memory. He may not have held office, but he still holds power. But perhaps the truest part of Rob Roy's legacy is this: he endured. Through betrayal, exile, imprisonment, and dishonor, he endured. He stood when others knelt. He rode when others fled. And in doing so, he became a mirror for anyone who has ever fought for something bigger than themselves. Rob Roy MacGregor may have been the last of a kind, but his spirit seeded countless others. In every land, in every era, those who rise against injustice echo his name, not always with swords, sometimes with silence, sometimes with stories, but always with the courage of a Highlander who would not yield.